Everyone, how's it going? I'm Kenneth Townsend, and I chair our Public Events Committee, and this is our first Friday Forum of the year, so we're really glad to see all of you here. I was afraid that with the beautiful weather outside that some of you would choose to hang out at the bowl instead, but I think that you're going to realize that you made the right decision by being here with us today. I'm going to go ahead and hand it on over to Kristen Tordella-Williams, who's going to provide a brief introduction for today's special speaker. So without anything further from me, Kristen, all yours.
Hello, I'm Kristen Tordella-Williams. I'm a professor of studio art at Millsaps. Some of you recognize me, some of you I don't know, and I hope you come up to the third floor either to go to the gallery or for any of the gallery events, or also to take an art class. We'd love to have you. So Peju, I'm so happy to welcome you to Millsaps. Phoenix Savage, who's a professor of studio art at Tougaloo, contacted me last year and said, I'm trying to get this international artist to come to Jackson. Are you interested in, and I was like, yes, please, come to Millsaps. We would love to welcome you. So to give you a little bit more information about Peju, she is the Associate Professor of Art and Art History in Lagos, which is I think the capital city of Nigeria. And she teaches everything similar to a professor here at Millsaps. We have lots of interests. So she is a visual artist. I'm reading from her bio if you can't tell, with working across mediums with an emphasis in experimental printmaking and repousee fine art. So she's going to give her artist talk about her project, which deals with the cultural rape of Benin, where many important historical artifacts, pieces of art were looted, they were stolen by colonial forces, right? I would like you to get into it, because you are the authority. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Layiwola.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kristen, for your very kind words and introduction. I bring you great greetings from Nigeria, from the Department of Creative Arts, University of Lagos. I'm very excited to be here. This is my first time of coming to Jackson, Mississippi, so put your hands together for me. I especially thank my dear friend, Phoenix Savage, who's a professor in Tougaloo, for inviting me to come here. And since I came here, I've witnessed the warmth of the people of Mississippi, and I hope that when I leave, I take some of the warmth back to Nigeria with me. The title of my paper is on the board, My Artistic Trajectory, Influences and New Directions. And basically, I'll be talking about some of the projects I've done in Nigeria, and I think this is important because it's not often that you find artists from very far away come to speak to people about their work. So I guess that this would be a learning call for you to see that we're working in a different cultural context, and I hope that you learn from that experience. Benin City is where I grew up. I work in Lagos, which used to be the capital. Now we have Abuja as the capital of Nigeria. I grew up in a city called Benin. There's also the country called Benin, the Republic of Benin. So we don't confuse the two of them. Now, this is a city that is known for the arts, for the art of bronze casting, for ivory, and for wood carving. And it has influenced my work greatly. I'm sure some of the images you find on the screen are things that you've seen before. The 15th century ivory mask, known as Queen Idia, and several other bronze works that you find here. These were works that were looted in 1897 by British soldiers. About 4,000 of these works were taken away to Britain, and then they were auctioned and sold to different countries of the world. Now, these are the same works that influence my art. I grew up in a city where we have a lot of art going on. Along the streets, we have a lot of carvers, a lot of bronze casters, and the entire city was divided into guilds. So I grew up as a young girl, being influenced by all of the art that was going on around the city. Now, again, some of the photographs that are in reference to the 1897 expedition to Benin. On the left side, or rather to my right, you find a picture of the king of Benin in 1897 that was exiled. British forces came in. The Benin king had contact with a lot of Europeans. And we had the Portuguese who had visited in the 15th century, we had the Dutch, the British also came in. But when they came in, they had other ideas beyond trade. So they were worried about the fact that the king restricted the access to the hinterland to have trade connections with other people. And they wanted to come over to tell the king to keep with the terms of an agreement he had signed earlier. So they actually came to the city in 1896, trying to convince the king, but they came with 250 carriers who were carrying ammunition in their boxes, and there were 9 Britons. So the Benin king, the loyalists of the king, felt that they were coming in for a different purpose, beyond just the discussion. So they waylaid them, they hijacked them, and they killed 7 out of 9. And the other 2 found their way out through the crates. And before long, the soldiers came in and around the city, burnt a lot of the towns they came in contact with, and carted away about 3,000 to 4,000 works of art. The king was exiled to Calabar when he died in 1914. The other photograph, you find some of the works that were looted from the palace of the king, and these are the plaques that you find in the British Museum today. So you have the British soldiers sitting amongst their loot. Now, the story of Benin is incomplete without talking about this expedition. These are the kings of Benin. We have kingship passed on from father to son. On the left here is the past king of Benin, and to my right here is the present king who was installed just last year. Now you ask me, what's my connection with all of this? The next slide shows you my mother. My mother is a daughter to Oba Kenzwa II, who ruled between 1933 and 1978. So she's a direct descendant of the family who owns the works that were plundered by the British soldiers. And she studied art, she studied sculpture at the University of Benin, and she had inspired me a great deal. She knows a lot about her culture. She was the first woman to go into the art of bronze casting in Nigeria. Her father, the king of Benin, gave her royal prerogative to learn the art of bronze casting from the Guild of Casters. In Benin, we had a lot of guilds. The Guild of Bronze Casters made works specifically for the king. And in fact, they are taking an oath of allegiance to make works just for the king alone, and not to teach the art to other members of other guilds. So it was an art that was hemmed in by secrecy. So I learned a lot from her. She was one of the pioneering students of the University of Benin, and then she learned metal casting from the local casters, and she was the only female in the group of 4 students who began the department. These are some of her works. She focused more on the female form, and these are a group of works that she did between 1981 and 1985. And they were works that depicted women, pregnant women, women with children, women in love, from the other slide that I'll show to you, with a woman with a husband, a reclining figure. And it's such a wonderful thing to think about women in that mood. Because people at school, they were wired to think that for you to be a successful woman in society, you have to have children, you have to be married, and you have to be able to keep your marriage. But moving from there, she also did a lot of women who were pregnant. And her work on the left side, she was a cement statuary. Apart from the fact that she worked in bronze, she also did works in cement. And she said when she was doing that work, she was actually pregnant. And she did a life-size work. Cement statuary is not very common on this side, but it was a material that was used in the 1970s and 1980s very popular among sculptors in Nigeria at the time. So she had a bronze form of the work depicted, which she titled 0 Hour. 0 Hour depicts a woman in the full term of pregnancy, when the woman is oscillating between life and death in a place where a lot of women die during pregnancy. There's high mortality for women who are pregnant. So here she finds that she puts a lot of charms around the body, believing that this charms will assist the woman during delivery. So another cement statuary that she has, I actually posed for this work in 1977. I was 10 years old. I used to go with her to college. And sometimes she would say, sit down, let me see your toes, and let me sculpt it. And then I would put my toes. Sometimes I would play with her materials as well. And so sometimes she gets really very upset when I tamper with her materials and her tools. But I was learning also from that experience. So for this work, I thought that I could introduce them into my work as well. So here I have a print which I did about a year ago. And I tried to superimpose my own image with her sculpture as a way of saying that she had passed on the skill to me, and this was a continuum. 4th month was also a way of referencing some of the works that she did that depicted women in pregnancy. And very recently, I noticed that even though I was copying her work, she never complained, so you shouldn't complain too. I tried to look at the textures and also put them into my work as well. But my works were really very different from her. She would patinate them, but my works were polished to high luster. I also did another work which focused on women. These are 2 women married to the same man. The man thinks they are the same, but they see themselves as very different. So you see them sitting back to back. They are actually very unhappy with themselves because they're competing for the same man. They look like twins, but they're sitting back to back. So that is titled Polygyny. And then the woman carrying a pot on her head, the quest for water, which was inspired by a series of prints I saw done by a professor at the University of Benin, Professor Irene Womboje, who did a series of prints titled The Romance of the Head Load. Now these have become cliches in Nigeria. Nobody does women carrying head loads on their heads anymore. It's not very popular. Now, in 2002, I was invited to facilitate in an art workshop, which is actually the biggest art workshop in Nigeria. And it's run by Bruce Onabakwaya, who's known as a master printmaker. He's one of the most documented artists, in fact, the most documented artist in Nigeria. He does amazing prints. So I was invited to teach bronze casting and jewelry. And from that point onwards, my arts changed a great deal. I believed before that experience that if it wasn't in bronze, then it wasn't art. So after attending this workshop, I began to explore. I became very experimental, working with different media, and I used all manner of media that I came in contact with. And whatever would express my ideas better, I used for my work. So I had, in that workshop, that first workshop, picked up a lot of found objects from around the premises of the workshop and used them for my mixed media. I also did a number of prints, over 100 prints in 2002, 2003. Also used some of the techniques that he had evolved. Now this is interesting for some of the art students. This is a new method he evolved at that time. He used epoxy glue, which would dry and become very hard to create a relief. And he put the glue on a very rough sandpaper, very high grades, very rough grades. And then allowed it to dry, and then printed out with printed ink, and then after it is dried up on the watercolor paper, they introduce your colors with oil pastel or chalk pastel. So that was how I created the prints in previous slides. And from there, moved on to doing a lot of these prints and then working with metal foil. Now, for the metal foil prints, you create the templates and then pass the metal foil over the template and pass it through a press. Sometimes if you want a high relief, then you actually do do direct tooling, like repousee. And for me, this actually changed the direction of my work. I now do a lot of this kind of prints, as you will see later. So this is a much larger piece. I've done works that have been done in three-dimensional form and also as two-dimensional pieces as well. This is a close-up of one of the works. And if you look at the work, you find that I like to use a lot of circles. I like textures. And because I come from a background of jewelry production, I really like the jewelry aesthetic. I like the details of form. And so when I create my prints, I make sure that I look out for things that have texture and I introduce them into my work. So you find a lot of circles. Circles that talk about the circle of time, the circle of life, from life to death. It just goes round and round. I like that form a lot. Again, some of the processes of producing my templates. The templates are movable. You can actually shift them, remove them, make large pieces, make small pieces, and change, the work as you like. The templates are created by etching into brass or copper sheets, painting with an acid resist. The blue colored slide shows the metals in acid, and then the other one on the mesh shows the etched metal. So I normally do very deep etching and use that for the prints. This is another work, which is very similar to the other one, but again, you see here I've tried to use keys. So I take the impression of keys along with the circles to create more and more textures that I use in my work. A private collector in Onitsha, in the eastern part of Nigeria, also collected his work. I think he was struck by the blue. And this work, which is titled Under the Tree, is actually in an exhibit now in Ibadan. The tree form is done by direct tooling. I actually pushed it out to get a very high relief, and then the textures on the other side are shallower. In 2003, I had a joint show with my mother, which was titled Of Bronzes and Prints, a Mother-Daughter Perspective. Some of the works that I showed you earlier had featured in that exhibition. This was the first time of bringing my works together with my mother. And it was novel. In Lagos, people do not have that experience of having a mother show with her daughter. So I thought that it was very important to also bring to the fore information about her. She was very well known in Benin City, but they didn't know her a lot in Lagos or in the big cities. So they were learning about her for the first time. A lot of people who did not know about her. So this was a great opportunity of bringing our works together, and people began to see the similarities between the works that she did and my own works. I also showed two authors who have done work on her. Betty Ladu wrote about her, and another artist, a female artist, Nike Davis, in 1991. But Betty Ladu focused more on her cement statuary, even though at that time she had done a lot of bronze works. But her focus was on the larger life-size cement works that she had in her studio. Barbara Blackmon looked at my mother's works as well as my own works and compared them with the works done by the Guild of Bronze Caster. It was a historical perspective, really, to show that bronze casting is some aspect of social change, that women were now coming into the art of casting, which had never been done before in Benin. In fact, in Benin, it's taboo for female to cast in metal. In traditional African societies, women were known to do arts and crafts that were tied to the home. They had to do things like pottery, they would not do metal casting, they would metal smithing, that would take them far away from their home. So they would do cloth weaving, so they put the loom right beside their beds on the tables, and they would walk while taking care of their kids and also taking care of their husbands. So it was very unusual to find women doing this kind of art. After that experience in 2003, an experience at a workshop organized by Bruce, I began to think more seriously about using history as a source of inspiration for my works. And I went back again to Benin. 1897 played a vital role. Now, my solo exhibition titled Benin1897.com was held in Lagos and Ibadan. Benin was the place, 1897 was the date, and .com refers to .commercial. .commercial because it was a commercial enterprise that brought the British to Benin. They came for trade. The Benin artworks that are found in different parts of the world have been co-modified. It is a game of dollar, game of pounds and euros. The works are being sold at auction houses. Works that were sold for £1 or £2 to offset the cost of the expedition to Benin now attract huge amounts. 4.5 million, 2010, at Sotheby for one of the works, and the price keeps soaring. So .com is a very vital aspect. It's a very commercial aspect of the entry into Benin and the works as they are today in the West. So the two exhibitions were held, or the exhibition was held in two venues, in Lagos and Ibadan, at the universities. For me, it was important that this should hold in the academy so that we will have a lot of discourse about how to move forward. These are contested patrimony. What is the way forward in showing the works in the issues of restitution and repatriation of cultural artifacts back to the places where they belong? It also arrived with a book, a catalog, and we had a lot of scholars who were African scholars. It was important to get their views expressed about the Benin stolen works. The foreword was written by the king of Benin, the past king of Benin, and it also had a very rich appendix of letters written by the members of the royal family to various museums asking for the works to be returned. Now, Benin Kings and Rituals was an exhibition that was held in 2007, and 300 works of Benin art that were plundered in 1897 were taken from different museums around the world and shown in Vienna. The 535-page catalog, which was put together by Barbara Packer-Steiner, became a source of inspiration for an artist, one of my students, who did a lot of cartoons referring to this whole idea of the Benin bronzes that were stolen. So the exhibition inspired the production of this work. And he had other cartoons as well. Double Standard, where it talks about Africans who are illegal in Europe going back to their own country, but the works still remain in Europe. So it would be nice to get the illegal immigrants take their works back to their country. So that was in 2010. Now this is one of the installations I had. Now if you look at the history books, it's between 3,000 and 4,000 works that were looted. We do not have the exact number of works. But for this installation, I thought that if I had 1,000 heads spread across the gallery space, that would give an idea of the scale of theft that went on. Now, the Benin works were not just taken off the shrines or taken from the bed chamber of the king. One of the eyewitness accounts actually states that the British soldiers opened fire on the Benin defenders who fell like knots from the top of trees. That was the context of removal of these Benin works. As an artist, I used terracotta, which is a lesser medium than bronze, the bronze works that were looted. And had 1,000 works, so it was huge. People coming into the exhibition space to see the works. And it was a scale of 1 to 4. I had metal foil, worked on the faces, and also did some pattern on them. I had cow bones, which were taken from the dunghill to represent the tusks, the very expensive and exquisite tusks that we find in the collections today. 1897 was written on a plaque, which was shattered to show that this was an event that shattered in a sense, shattered the culture of the people, that interfered with the religious and political life of the people of Benin. I also looked at the archives, some of the entries written by the British soldiers, and all of the commands that went between the soldiers and the Home Office. There were records of the number of ammunitions that were expended on a single day. It was all documented on each of the tiles. This was a huge installation that was hung against the wall. Everywhere that the British soldiers came in contact with, every village and town, they set ablaze as they made their way into Benin, to the palace of the king. And at the end of the expedition, when it was very successful, it was documented that the queen rejoiced. Some of the heads with the copper foil and brass foil over the faces. Now, on the third day, the British soldiers came into the palace of the king. There was a fire. There was an outbreak of fire. But don't forget that they've been burning everywhere, so it's very possible that some of the leaves or the sheaves of the thatch roof had caught fire. And if you find some of the collections, like the ivory, which I saw in one of the museums, had the burn marks from this fire. So I tried to introduce some kind of outlines onto the bronze one so that I have a variety. To actually, as a reference to this episode of what happened in the palace when the walls were set ablaze, and also to give variety to the installation when they were displayed. I also used a lot of gourds to represent each year from the time of the expedition 1897. So I had a number of gourds that were exhibited. I tried to take away the ritual context of gourds. Usually gourds are used for keeping sacrifices. But these gourds were painted with particular symbols that were associated with the kings of Benin. For example, you find the cloth and this calabash. The cloth here was designed in 1978 when Oba Kenzoa II died. And they transferred, painted the design onto the calabash. That cloth was designed by my mother to commemorate her father's passing in 1978. So we also have the gods painted at the top there, the ones that were painted. And when the king was exiled in 1897, he was moved to Calabar. He died in 1914, sorry. And during those 17 years, there was no king on the throne. That was the period of interregnum. So on these calabashes, I had 17 calabashes that were painted plain, without any design. That was the fabric, the commemorative fabric that she designed. They were done in two colors, one in yellow and the other in white. Another project I did, titled Whose Centenary, was done in 2014. And instead of having it as a solo exhibition or performance, I decided to invite other artists to join me. And we had about 10 artists. We had an African-American performer who was based in Texas, but has now come to Nigeria. She spends her time between Nigeria and the US. We also had Ines Val. She was a Portuguese artist. It was important for me to have her in this show because she represented that very cosmopolitan nature that Benin was at the time. There were a lot of Portuguese, a lot of Dutch people, there were a lot of Britons in Benin. So coming in here, it was important that she took part in this project. She was also a photographer. We had the poets, we had sculptors, we had painters, photographers who took part in this public arts display. Now, 1914 was the year that the northern and southern part of Nigeria were amalgamated by the British. For us as artists, we felt that the Nigerian state was celebrating something that was not worth celebrating. It's almost like celebrating the, slavery, for example, celebrating slavery. So we felt that it was ridiculous celebrating the commemoration of the amalgamation of the two regions. Nigerians were not part of that agreement. It was some kind of administrative convenience which brought together two parts of the country. So we thought that 1914 was actually the year that Oba was exiled, and that was the year that should be celebrated. That was the year he died. So we should commemorate a king that stood against British imperialism. So we went off to Benin for a public art display. So all the artists were involved in this production. This is a street where the Guild of Casters actually live and work. Casting in Benin has gone uninterrupted. We still have the Guild of Casters. Although in the past they would make works specifically for the king, for veneration of the shrines and for the kings, but now they can make works for anybody. But they still have this street known as Igu Street where they do their work. So we did our activation on this space. We went down to the streets and did all our performances. Now these are the performers, those who took part in the Whose Centenary project. We did a procession from the King's Court, where he has the children have the houses, and then we moved all the way along the streets to the front of the palace, and from the front of the palace we walked down to the public space, that is the guild, where the guild of casters live, the Igun Street. And that was where we had the major display of sculptures, of paintings, site-specific installations. At the bottom of this slide, you find some of my students who were also involved in making the costumes. We did paper, a lot of paper beads. These are all made of paper, and crepe paper for the costumes as well. So for us, it was important that we celebrate the richness of the culture, the richness of the costumes that were used by the Benin chiefs and Benin royalty. This is a performance titled Obalvorame Cathedral, and it was put together by an artist called Jelili Atiku, who's one of the fastest, very well-known performer. And it was quite interesting because when the British came, they felt that Benin was very fetish. Were not Christians, they were doing a lot of sacrifices. They had a lot of fetish objects, like the object you find in the middle of the circle. That is one of the bronze heads. It's also interesting to know that these fetish objects are now on this side. The demonic objects were taken away and now become really very valuable in the market. He threw away all of the religious icons. The cross, he had no value for it. In his performance, he had a lot of hymnals. You can see the bird of prophecy, which is one of the very important objects, Benin art objects, which he used as one of the symbols for his own church. So he called his Holy Obalvorame Cathedral. And he went around the streets inviting people to come for a sermon, which was going to hold, a service was going to hold in the public space along Igu Street. So you can see him here carrying the banner and people looking at him and following him. He actually had a lot of followers and new converts in this performance. Yeah. Mura Natasha Ogunji, the African-American artist. The concept was that my mother, wearing the white attire, was to bring her into the fold. She was returning to Nigeria. So she was to dress her up like a Benin princess as a way of welcoming her back home to where she belongs. So Mura was totally transformed and she was in awe when she saw herself. This is how Benin princesses dress when they're getting married. So she was very excited about this. And amidst a lot of singing and dancing and praise songs of kings, all of this was going on. So you had the performers with singing songs, and the young lady in front wearing the gold wrapper was a poet, reading a poem which she titled No Answer, as a reference to all the correspondence that have gone on between the members of the Benin family, the royal family, the Nigerian government, asking for the works to be returned. The performance was also held at the Igu Street, and these are some of the dancers and singers. Again, these are the costumes of the chiefs. The chiefs on the upper slide are the chiefs of the Benin Palace. These are high chiefs, really very revered, going to the palace for the ceremony, the annual ceremony. But below the performers who were wearing crepe cloth, really very similar to the costumes that are worn by the Benin chiefs. This is Mura performing her during her performance titled Sweep, sweeping the streets of Benin as a means of sweeping up all the pain, all the detritus of colonialism. And she was doing that in short motions, sweeping, and then we went on to the next production, the next performance. Here we have Burns Fiom, a performer. His family was involved in keeping Obalvorame in Calabar when he was exiled. So he used, in his performance, he used an umbrella as a metaphor for nurture, for protection. And from the umbrella, he had a lot of ropes and photographs where Obavorame had lived in Calabar. So for him, this was not art. This was actually coming to tell us that this was part of his personal history and letting us know that he had a role to play. So he was very, very passionate about taking part in this. He came, he was not originally invited for the performance, but he told me he was going to come, and he came. Yeah. Victor Ekameno, doing his on-site performance, he was painting and singing. There was a lot of Benin music being played in the background as he did his painting. And this painting was put up in the palace of the head of the Guild of Casters, where he did his own installation. And he got a lot of bronze walls, because we try not to disturb the artists who were working, because this is actually their own home space, and this is also their gallery space. So we didn't go in there to invade their space, they were doing their own thing. So he was also buying bronze walls which he tied to the bottom of his canvases for his installation. Taye Idao, influenced by the rich costumes of Benin, did some prints and paintings, and she has extended this idea beyond what she showed at this 2015 exhibition. And she's doing a lot of this now in Lagos. Yeah, so we're back again to the 2010 installation we saw earlier. But in this case, I have moved now the works from the white cube in the university to a living space. This was along the corridor of the palace, the head of the Guild of Casters. This is his palace. So I put up the works along the corridor. For me, this was very important in the sense that I was bringing the works back home. And I also invited the traditional artists who were into bronze casting to bring their works into this installation. This was a very significant aspect of this project because they work separate from the academic artists, the artists who's trained in the academy. So inviting them to show their works alongside mine was a novel thing in Benin. And by the time we got to the venue, after doing a long procession, I saw a totally transformed installation. So they brought out the best pieces from their workshop and put them into the installation here. That's the top view of the works. And then, again, the side view. For me, I like this photograph a lot because I'm just wondering what the woman is thinking about. With the baby on the back. What is she thinking about? It's very difficult to tell. The Portuguese photographer and Andre Sego, they went to the archive, they took a photograph, a 1974 photograph, which is black and white. And then they identified the house that was represented in that photograph in 1974. And they found some of the people in that 1974 photograph in the house. And that's exactly how the house looked in 2014. And they put the two photographs together. I thought that was quite interesting. And then you ask yourself, what is this all about, this project? What have I achieved by doing this work? I would say that it has actually generated a lot of discourse and brought about a lot of awareness about this historical episode. In 2015, a Briton called Adrian Walker brought back two bronze works. His grandfather was a member of the forces that came into Benin in 1997. And as a young boy, he said he loved the works. He always saw them on the cabinet and he liked them so much. But when his own parents died, he inherited the two sculptures. And he felt that since he loved them so much, he wondered how those who actually owned the works would feel if he kept them. And so he decided to bring the works back to Benin. And he returned the works to the Oba of Benin, the king of Benin. And there was so much celebration in the palace. The palace was really excited to see the two works, not really very significant works, but for the fact that he showed remorse and he brought the works himself back to the city. It was a very, very, very wonderful thing to see. So we have a lot of artists who are also engaging with this thing. Some of the cartoons I showed you, we've had a lot of writers who have done, playwrights who have done plays. 1974, Olaroti was able to play about Vorame, that's the title of the play. And we also had Adenjerima do another play in 1997 to commemorate the centenary of the expedition. And there's been a lot of artistic engagement with this thing. So, the two works that Adrian Layiwola, the doctor, brought back, one of them is the Bed of Prophecy that was used by Jelili Atiku for his performance. I thought that was prophetic. And the gong, the two works were the gong and the bird. And that's Adrian Layiwola holding the two pieces in the palace of the king before offering to the king. And I use that a lot in some of my works, the two images in some of my installations. I'm going to start by looking at this slide, and that's the new direction of my work. Now I'm putting in more colors into my prints. I'm trying to see how I can, for the next year, do another exhibition that looks at the clothing tradition of the Yoruba people. Cloth, clothing, dressing is a big thing in Nigeria. We celebrate cloth. Cloth speaks to us. There are a lot of idioms, a lot of proverbs that are tied to cloth. And here I'm looking at some of these very interesting symbols. They have meanings, they have names, which I'm going to introduce into my work to look at the whole idea of dyeing fabrics. So I did a project in 2010 as a solo exhibition, and the next one was in 2014. So I think I'm due to have another project in 2018. Yeah. So I'd like to stop at this point and take your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Lots of interesting information. It's beautiful work that you've done and your mother as well. I have two questions, if I may. I fear that the first question might be answered very easily, and it is about whether there's been any response from the Visiting Museum at all. I know that they have come out with an official statement about their determination not to return the marbles to Athens, the Parthenon marbles. And I wondered if they have taken the time or effort to respond at all about the Benin request.
Okay. So you're going to ask two questions. That's
Yeah. So the second one is your mother, and I'm interested, given the fact that bronzes traditionally were reserved for male artists and were for the king, whether she got much resistance at the point when she was starting to work in bronze.
Thank you very much. Okay, the first question about whether there's been any response from the British Museum. There hasn't been any response from any of the museums. Yes, it's very sad that this is happening. The example of Adrian Walker, Dr. Adrian Walker, who returned the work, that was the private collection. In the 1930s, there were returns made to Oba Akenzo II. In fact, the regalia of Oba Vorab, who was exiled to Calabar, was returned. They were returned to Oba Akenzo, but that again was in the private collection. There hasn't been any return from any of the major museums. And I think the scare is that once there's a return from one quarter, it just empties the museums. And that's why sometimes the museums are regarded as museums of loot. You know, so, but I think this is a moral question. It's a moral issue. These works were stolen, they're very well documented. The Benin bronzes are the most well documented, are the best documented instances of loot, of plundered artifacts. Because the soldiers themselves were writing. Adrian Walker, in addition to returning those two works, also gave a copy of his grandfather's diary to the Oba of Benin. And in that diary, he wrote in his own handwriting that he was packing up his loot 3 times, 3 entries in the diary. So they also knew that they were looting, they were not taking them, because in 1896, there had been dispatches to the Home Office saying that if they ever had an expedition to Benin, they would find enough bronzes, enough valuables in the palace to offset the cost of an expedition. And in 1897, they overran the palace. So there hasn't been any response from the museum. Now, the issue of my mother working in the medium, yeah, of course, definitely people felt that this was strange. But if you know about the powers that the kings of Benin have, the kings were not just ordinary men, they were not seen as ordinary men, they were seen as God kings, and their words were infallible. They felt that whatever they said was law. So they may have grumbled quietly, but they didn't show any open attack. And he actually commanded the head of that family group to open his foundries for how to learn. And she has established such a link with them that in 2015, when I went to 2014, when I went to Benin for the whole seminary project, the son of the chief who taught my mother how to cast in bronze was very open to us. He was very receptive. He was very excited about the project. And for him, it was like my mother returning again to a good street. So this was what happened. She didn't have any kind of resistance. They felt it was strange because that was the first time. I mean, Benin is such a society that is hemmed in by tradition, that having this kind of break, this kind of disruption would make people turn to see and ask questions, but they couldn't face the king. So they left her to do what she did, and thankfully I was able to follow that tradition.
I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit more about your personal relationship with the Benin plaques and artifacts that were taken, because there's such a strong connection to your own cultural heritage, but it's something that's not there. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about that.
Well, when I was doing my 2010 project, I had to travel. I went to the British Museum. I also went to the Metropolitan Museum. I went to the Field Museum. I went to a lot of places where they have Benin collections. I also went to Berlin, the museum in Berlin. It's always a feeling, even the Museum of Ethnology in Vienna, we had a show in 2007. Seeing that show gave me, I felt really very moved because we've heard about the stories. But seeing the works, displayed, it was a different feeling entirely because it's part of what belongs to my family, my mother's family, as it were. So at that level, there's this feeling of loss, okay? Because I belong, in a sense, to the family. But as an African scholar, I also feel a loss in the sense that we do not have access to these materials for study. You have better access to the Benin material than myself. So again, these are the kind of feelings that one has from time to time that a lot, access is removed. We have to come over here to look at the works each time. And the casters themselves have never, the casters themselves who produces, who are descendants of the bronze tradition, many of them don't have access to coming to Europe or America, so they will never get to see these works. They will see them in catalogs. In my article, which was written, which was published in Pablo China's book, I looked at this whole cultural amnesia, the issue of memory, the issue of history, and how there's a disconnect. So the artists are going back now to look at catalogs that are published here in America, published in Europe, to copy some of the works that were done by the predecessors. So it's such a very messy thing. There's a lot to talk about in terms of identity, in terms of copyright. It's also very convoluted. Yes, please.
I love your work.
Thank you.
I don't have a question. I don't have a good question about art. I want to ask a question about politics. I learned from your presentation that there are royal persons in Nigeria today. In fact, you are a royal person. But Nigeria is a democracy that elects a president, and it's got a framework that we derive from what the British did. I wonder, is this a politically uncomfortable rivalry of different kinds of authority, or is it all on the side of cultural authority, the Oba and the people that I found out about from your?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Now that we have a new system of government, you will expect that the traditional fathers will not have, a very strong role to play, and to be basically cultural, what they will do in cultural. But I think that it's so different in Benin. I went for the coronation of the new king, and it was amazing to see how everybody was taken in by this thing. It wasn't just like the king was being installed, I'm going to watch television. No, they were all part and parcel of it. For them, it was part of their identity. They celebrated it, and they felt that this was what they should be doing at that time. They followed it, they recorded it. It took over. Everybody was involved in it. Okay. I also had the privilege of going to see the king in court, because he always held courts every day. People would come from different parts of Benin to make complaints about maybe land issues or one thing or the other. And whatever the king said was law, even though you have the court of law. You have the courts of law. But they would come to the king, and the king would pronounce, and they would adhere to whatever the king has said. So we have this thing. It's kind of interesting how it works, but the king is there, he has his powers. It may not be as it was before British incursion, but he still has a lot of control over the people of Benin. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Okay. One question. How do you think the prints, like, what inspired you to get on to do printmaking, and how do you think that connects to your cultural heritage?
Okay. What inspired me to go into printmaking? I didn't intend to learn printmaking when I started out. I was invited to teach broadcasting, which I learned in school and from my mother. I also had learned jewelry in school. But having come to the workshop, we had quite a number of people who were in different sections. We had printmaking section, we had painting, mixed media, welding. It was kind of broad spectrum, and we all used the same space. So after doing my own teaching, I had the opportunity of interacting with other artists, and I felt like I did with my mother, play with her materials and working. I also went to some of the workshops and began doing my own thing, and that was how I got very interested in it. And I found that printmaking allows you to do so much within a short time. I mean, you do that with broadcasting. You have to prepare the wax model, you have to print it out. So I found it so easy, really easy. So by the time I finished the workshop, and I did about 100 prints within less than 6 months. And I took the same works, I took the works I'd done to Bruce to show him. And he said, "This is incredible, this is huge, the number of works you produced." But for me, it was effortless, because I was coming from a very difficult background of art making.